Good evening, everyone. I think the title's pretty much all going to say it all right now. Needless to say, I wasn't a happy camper when I listened to it earlier. But then again, nobody knows my family history better than I do. Which I found this to be quite disrespectful. Just not to our forefathers, but to my family in general. It's considered we can date our ancestry clear back and past John Rutledge. She seemed to want to refer to Rutledge as losing his property and plantations to the British. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that's a falsehood. He never lost his plantation. He retired and died from his plantation. And what I really found disrespectful and distasteful to hear her talk about what she was talking about, which my forefather opposed. He opposed it such to a point, it even cost him a complete full nomination from the Senate to be the Supreme Court Justice. He was a Supreme Court Justice. He was appointed by George Washington to set in until his appointment was to be approved by Congress. But he went up against what were they called? A loyalist. He was part of the, Jeffersonian Republicans. And, they didn't quite get along with the other side very well, which in turn eventually cost him his nomination to the seat that he was appointed to, and was just waiting for the process. So, who was John Rutledge? Let's give you a little background. In mid-1765, Rutledge was an important figure in the Stamp Act Congress. This Congress produced a resolution that stated that it was the undoubted right of an Englishman that no taxes be imposed on them but with their own consent, given personally or by their representatives. Rutledge chaired a committee that drew up a petition to the House of Lords attempting to persuade them to reject the Stamp Act. They were ultimately unsuccessful. When the delegates returned to South Carolina after the Congress adjourned, and by the way, you'll later find out he was also known as Dictator John. They found the state in turmoil. The people had destroyed all the revenue stamps they could find. They broke into the house of suspected loyalists to search for stamps. When the Stamp Act went into effect on November 1st, 1765, there was no stamps in the entire colony. Dougal Campbell, the Charleston Clerk of Court, refused to issue any papers without the stamps. Because of this, all legal processions in the entire state came to a standstill until news that the Stamp Act had been repealed reached South Carolina in early May 1766. In 1774, Rutledge was elected to the First Continental Congress. It is not known what John Rutledge did in the Congress. Records of the Congress refer only to Rutledge, though both John and his brother Edward were present. The most important contribution made by Rutledge to the Congress was during the debate on how to appropriation votes in the Congress. Some wanted votes to be appropriated by the population of the colonies. Others wanted to give each colony one vote. Rutledge observed that as the Congress had no legal authority to force the colonies to accept its decisions, it would make the most sense to give each colony one vote. The other delegates ultimately agreed to this proposal. Later, John Rutledge became president of South Carolina in 1776. Or after that, he became president of South Carolina. John Rutledge served in the First Continental Congress and the Second Continental Congress until 1776. That year, he was elected president of South Carolina under a constitution drawn up on March 26, 1776. Upon taking office, he worked quickly to organize the new government and to prepare defenses against the British attack. In early 1776, Rutledge learned that the British forces would attempt to take Charleston. In response, he ordered the construction of Fort Sullivan, now Fort Maltier, on Sullivan's Island in Charleston Harbor. When the British arrived, the fort was only half completed. General Charles Lee of the Continental Army, who had arrived a few days earlier with reinforcements from North Carolina, told Rutledge the fort should be evacuated, as Lee considered it indefensible. Lee said that the fort would fall under a half hour and the men would be killed. In a note to the fort's commanding officer, Colonel William Maltier, Rutledge wrote, "General Lee wishes you to evacuate the fort. You will not, without an order from me. I would sooner cut off my hand than write one." Rutledge noticed that Lee was arrogant and uncouth and unfit to control the militia. Rutledge, by virtue of being elected by the state, gained control of the militia. Rutledge let it be known that only he could order the militia to defend Charleston. During this time, Rutledge garnered the nickname Dictator John by virtue of getting his way with things. On June 28, 1776, the British attacked the fort, expecting it to fall quickly. However, the fort walls were made up of palmetto logs packed with sand, and the British cannonballs were absorbed into the soft core of the logs without doing much damage, and the British were repulsed, saving Charleston. The battle anniversary is still celebrated as Carolina Day. On June 28 each year, South Carolina's current palmetto flag, adopted in 1861, features the crescent symbol on the defending soldier's cap along with the palmetto tree. Rutledge continued as president of South Carolina until 1778. That year, the South Carolina legislature proposed a new constitution. Rutledge vetoed it, stating that it moved the state dangerously close to direct democracy, which Rutledge believed was only a step away from total anarchy. When the legislation overrode his veto, Rutledge resigned. Governor of South Carolina. A few months after Rutledge's resignation, the British, having suffered several defeats in the North, decided to try and retake the South. Lieutenant Colonel Archibald Campbell landed in Georgia with 3,000 men and quickly took control of the entire state. The Constitution was revised, and in 1779, Rutledge was elected governor. Rutledge sent troops under General Benjamin Lincoln into Georgia to harass the British. The new British commander of the South, General Jacques Prevost, responded by marching on Charleston with 2,500 troops. When Rutledge heard about the threat, he hurried to Charleston and worked furiously to build up the defense. In spite of Rutledge's efforts, when General Prevost arrived outside Charleston, the British force had been greatly increased by the addition of loyalists, and the Americans were vastly outnumbered. Rutledge privately asked Prevost for surrender terms. Prevost made an offer, but when Rutledge submitted it to the Council of War, the Council instructed Rutledge to ask if the British would accept declaration of South Carolina's neutrality in the Revolution. They forbade Rutledge from surrendering, mainly because William Monterey, who was now a general, believed that the Americans had at least as many troops as the British forces. which consisted largely of untrained civilians. Provost replied that as he was faced with such large military forces, he would have to take some of the prisoners before he could accept. Molitor advised the council that he would never stand by and allow British to take American prisoners without fighting, so the council decided to fight it out. The city braced itself for an attack. By the next morning, the British disappeared. Provost has intercepted a letter from General Lincoln to Molitor saying that he was marching to aid of Charleston, and Provost decided that he could not hold out if the Americans got reinforcements. In early 1780, Sir Henry Clinton attacked South Carolina, and Charleston was thrown into a panic. The legislation adjourned. Learning of the British, their last action was to give Rutledge power to do anything short of execution without trial. Rutledge did his best to raise the militia forces, but Charleston was in the midst of a smallpox epidemic. A few dared to enter the city. In February, Clinton landed near Charleston with 5,000 troops. By May, he had 9,000 troops to less than 2,500 Americans in the area. On May 10th, Charleston surrendered. Rutledge had left the city. He remained governor of the unconquered part of South Carolina. Though the Americans defeated the British in the Battle of Cowpens in January 1781, they could not drive the British back to Charleston until June 1781, when General Nathaniel Greene arrived with more troops. The British held Charleston until December 14, 1782. John Rutledge's term of office had already ended, and he did not run again because of term limits. A few weeks after leaving the governorship, Rutledge was again elected to the Continental Congress, where he served until 1783. In 1784, he was appointed to the South Carolina Court of Chancery, where he served until 1791. 1787, Rutledge was elected to represent South Carolina in the Philadelphia Convention, which was called to revise the Articles of Confederation, but instead produced the United States Constitution. He attended all the sessions and served on 5 committees. At the convention, Rutledge maintained a moderate nationalist stance and chaired the Committee of Detail. After the convention had debated the Virginia Plan and settled some major points of controversy, the Committee of Detail, which Rutledge chaired, assembled during the convention's July 4th recess. Though the committee did not record its minutes, it is known that the committee used the original Virginia Plan, the decision of the convention on the modifications to that plan, and other sources to produce the first full draft. Much of what was included in that draft consisted of details such as powers given to Congress that hadn't been debated by the convention. Most of these were uncontroversial and unchallenged, and so much of what Rutledge's committee included in the first draft made it into the final version of the Constitution without debate. Rutledge recommended that the executive power should consist of a single person rather than several, because he left that one person would feel the responsibility of office more accurately, because the president would not be able to defer a decision to another co-president. Rutledge concluded that a single person would be more likely to make a good choice. Rutledge was largely responsible for denying the Supreme Court the right to give advisory opinions. Being a judge himself, he strongly believed that the judge's sole purpose was to resolve legal conflicts. He held that a judge should hand down an opinion only when ruling on an actual case. He also thought that the legal community was the higher tier of society. Don't kind of agree with that part, but hey, that was their philosophy back then. Rutledge also argued that if either house of legislature was to have the sole authority to introduce appropriation bills, it should be the Senate. He noted that the Senate, by nature of its lengthier terms of office, would tend to be more leisurely in its actions. Because of this, Rutledge felt that the Senate would be better able to think clearly about what the consequences of a bill would be. Also, since the bills could not become law without the consent of the House of Representatives, he concluded that there would be no danger of the Senate ruling the country. When the proposal was made that only landowners should have the rights to vote, Rutledge opposed it, perhaps more strongly than any other motion in the entire convention. He stated that making such a rule would divide the people into haves and have-nots, would create an underlying resentment against landowners, and could do nothing but cause discord. He was supported by Benjamin Franklin, and the rule was adopted. And the debate George Washington nominated Rutledge to the Supreme Court of the United States as an Associate Justice on September 24th, 1789. The United States Senate confirmed his appointment on September 26, 1789, and Washington signed both commissions of Chief Justice John Jay and Rutledge the same day. On March 4th, 1791, Rutledge resigned from the Supreme Court without having heard a case in order to become Chief Justice of South Carolina Court of Common Pleas and Sessions. On June 28, 1795, Chief Justice John Jay resigned, having been elected governor of New York. President Washington selected Rutledge to succeed Jay as Chief Justice. As the Senate was not in session at the time, Rutledge's recess appointment took effect immediately. He was commissioned as the second Chief Justice of the Supreme Court on June 30th, 1795. On July 16, 1795, Rutledge gave a highly controversial speech denouncing the Jay Treaty with Great Britain. He reportedly said in the speech that he'd rather the president should die than sign that pure lay instrument, and that he preferred war to an adoption of it. Rutledge's speech against Jay's treaty cost him the support of many in Washington's administration, which supported the treaty, and in the Senate, which subsequently advised it, consented to its ratification by two-thirds vote, and which would soon be debating and voting on his nomination to the Supreme Court. His little proposal there cost him the official nomination, and therefore he actually was the first one to be, as they put it, of 15 recessive appointments to the Supreme Court, it remains the only one to be rejected, and to date, Rutledge remains the only person ever removed involuntarily from the Supreme Court. That was just, we needed the treaty to avoid any further conflict. He didn't see it that way, unfortunately. And he paid for it in the end. Following his disastrous speech on the Jay Treaty, Senate rejection, and resignation from the Supreme Court, Rutledge withdrew from the public life and returned to Charleston. He died on June 21, 1800, at the age of 60. He was interned at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Charleston. One of his houses, said to have been built in 1763 and defiantly sold in 1790, was revoted in 1989 and opened to the public. Because after his little demise from the Supreme Court, he fell into alcoholism and attempted to commit suicide, jumping off a bridge where two slaves came and actually saved his life. Then history went on, Civil War came about, things ran its course. Which is what caused the divide in our family, where parts of our family migrated to the north and parts stayed in the south, as it was with the Civil War time. But for her to quote something, and mind you guys, if you check out the other link, the very same article she read was debunked a couple years ago. about many of the Founding Fathers. And as you can see, many of the things that they've been proposing here of late goes completely against what our forefathers and the people that signed the Constitution stood for. You know, I know quite a lot of my history, especially when it comes to family history. Like I said, when I created Sons and Daughters of Liberty, I created it for a reason. I based it off a principle, an ideology, an image that should stand everlasting and should be upheld, the Constitution. To have somebody like Nancy Pelosi disrespecting it daily, then to use my forefathers' name in a lie, I found that very disrespectful, as does many of my family, especially the ones who fought for this country during World War II, Korea, who's my very grandfather, we had to play hell with the government just to get his fucking plaque, his military plaque, to put on his stone. And that was in the 90s. I'd hate to imagine how hard you'd have to go to do it now. Well, I actually do know. When my uncle Verl died, oh, not my uncle, my grandfather's brother Verl died, they played the same hell trying to get his plaque. But they had no problem. They were more than happy to bury him in Arlington. We didn't want him in Arlington. We wanted him with his family. You know, my family's fought for this country up and down. To have somebody like Nancy Pelosi come out and state the things she stated today, lying, I have a very big issue with that. I have a very big issue with what they were even trying to propose. Talking about ethics committees. I'm all for taking the big money, the big donor packs, the corporate America out of the politics so they can't donate as much money. But let's look at facts. The facts are the Democratic Party has spent more money and received more money from corporate sectors and high donations than from the American people. So my question is, what's the catch? Why all of a sudden you're talking about these things? I understand the ethics part. You want to use that to go after the people that are trying to do their jobs. Unlike you guys. And especially unlike her. Her state's a sanctuary city and they're violating the very Constitution. They're violating the very laws that our Congress just passed 2 weeks ago. Not a single Democrat voted for that law, the sanctuary city. Rephrase, one did. They actually got that wrong in the media. I watched the thing. And you can actually go upload it, and you'll see where one actually voted for it. One Democrat came over and voted for it. But I tell you what, it wasn't Nancy Pelosi. It wasn't anybody from New York, California, or any state that had sanctuaries. And by doing so, and by doing so, and by still representing and saying it's okay to have sanctuary cities, you're disrespecting our Constitution. Because I don't care, you can use all the lingo and terminology and rhetoric you want. There is a difference between illegal and immigrant. Immigrants here legally, visa. Illegal, which was the term that the Democrat Party refused to say, and they're just calling them immigrants, therefore the Constitution did apply to them. And therefore, if they weren't lying, they were right by leaving out the word illegal. I'm sick and tired of the rhetoric, the political games, the lies. I'm sick and tired of them saying, as they talked in that whole speech. I actually watched it when it went live this morning or this afternoon. It was right after 12 o'clock. How they're talking about American people. You haven't supported the American people, because if you would support the American people, you'd be getting rid of Obamacare. Oh, wait. If you supported the American people, you guys would have voted for the sanctuary law bills, which you did not. You haven't been for the people in a very long time. And there's quite a few Republicans that are the same way. I'm tired of them screaming Constitution, Forfathers, and they disrespect it. And they even go as far as lying about it. I haven't heard an apology yet from her. My family's waiting. I'm sure other families out there that know their descendants from the signers of the Constitution are also waiting for your apology. You know, this is a person that, I don't know how many of you guys remember, but what, 2009, 2009, it might have been before that, 2008, how she was big on climate control, big on cutting spending, but she was flying all over the place in these jets at your dime. Is that, wow, even Obama said, we got to, and he had that part right, we got to cut back, live within our means. But that also meant everybody else too. That didn't just mean we the people, that meant everybody. But no, they just wanted to fly around back in, rent these planes, go to these places on your dime, and there wasn't money to be spent for that. I think you guys forget about Nancy Pelosi's little shenanigans. Go back and research it, Google it. The truth is, she's not my problem. We've got our own senators in my state that's a problem. That needs to be removed. And honestly, guys, that's, the only message I really have for you. It's quite simple. When these election cycles start coming around for these judges, these congressmen, if they haven't been supporting us, they haven't been our voice, do not elect them in office. I've got my own opinions about Kid Rock. I don't really want to see anyone that's from the music industry, Hollywood, enter politics. Right now, we need everyday people like you out there listening to this. I haven't heard what Kid Rock had to say yet, but I also know if I lived in Michigan, he probably wouldn't get my vote. Uncle Ted would get my vote. He's already announced. That's what people forget. Ted Nugent's already announced he's going to run for Senate. At least I know Ted Nugent's stance when it comes to the Constitution. I look forward to hearing what Kid Rock has to say. I like some of his music, but personally don't got nothing against him. But I want to hear what he's got to say. Show me he's different. Show me he has the same values and beliefs that Ted Nugent has, and hey, you might get my vote. Doubt it. Uncle Ted is more, I don't know, grew up with him, so at least he hasn't changed his views and opinions on things. But it is funny. What I read you guys can actually go look it up. I'll actually have access to the old journals. You can actually look it up. That's just a Wikipedia article. I mean, I verified most of the facts in it to make sure everything was factual. For the most part, it is. But I was reassured that from the family history side of it, that he never lost his lands to the British. He ended up dying and selling them because he was bankrupt. In fact, I'll tell you how bankrupt, which is weird. You guys will read it. He, as a lawyer, he fought and protected slave rights. He went after people that abused slaves. But he also owned 60, which that caused a division in the family. His wife disavowed and freed every slave she owned, where him, on the other hand, he didn't. He died with still one. You'd think, like I said, he tried to commit suicide, jumped off a bridge into the river. Slaves that saved him. You would have thought that he would have changed his mind, because, I mean, 60, that's a young age. You would think he would have changed his mind, seeing that what he was doing was wrong, but he did not. But also, as I pointed out, most people conception that it was only blacks that were slaves. No. Many of the immigrants that came over that were white were indentured slaves. It was the way they paid for the passage from Europe to here. It was called indentured slavery. It is part of our darker history. Have seemed to forgot. Well, mainly because it's not taught in our histories anymore. Our kids don't learn these histories. Just like I look forward to sharing these stories, my family's history, legacy, with my brother's kids. They're starting to get up in that age. And I'm proud of my brother, introducing them to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, teaching them old skills that will help them be better men and better women. Not teaching them how to survive off the land. And it'd be an honor to be able to teach them our family history, what the Rutledge name means. You know, yes, there's some dark times in our family which causes separation and division. Learn from those things. We're not supposed to repeat those things. You know, just like the way my forefather looked at it, the Senate should be able to so they wouldn't become a dictatorship, in a sense, controlling the country. They believed in that trust, even with the differences they had. He opposed the loyalists. And it cost him a Supreme Court nomination. I read it to you guys. I mean, they are known as the Jeffersonian Republicans for a reason. But I think it was fun. You know, it took something like this for me to share my history, my family's history. You know, there's a reason. Like I said, I do things sometimes. When I create and design things, I try to make sure they have meaning, a part of me that is a part of my history. I want it to have meaning. Sons and Daughter of Liberties, yes, it means Sons of Liberty. But we're in a new age. It's actually, and it's also back then, women's equality wasn't there. All these things that we've seen transpire, they have meaning. There's a reason why I titled this Sons and Daughters of Liberty. Because the women played their part and roles throughout history as well. Just as much as the men did. Beginning thing, I should have titled this channel update. I mean, I had like 4 or 5 viewers on a channel update. Just playing, guys. Yes, I'm in a little bit better spirits. So I'm not happy. But like I said, it is what it is. Things always work out. You know. So, but for the most part, guys, you guys call me Drew. No dictator, please. What can I say? But let's look at that little history lesson. If he wouldn't have done what he did, Charleston would have fell the first time around. No disrespect to you North Carolinians. Because I know what the Mountain Men did on Kings Mountain. No, they got all the props from me. I know what all the Mountain Men do. It goes to show you, revisiting some of our forefathers' history will pave a way to find common ground with each other, put an end to these discrepancies, put an end to the stupid rhetoric that they keep using. I mean, I'm going to be waiting for an apology probably for the rest of my life from her. You know, it's a shame there's no Rutledges that live in California. We stayed on the East Coast. We migrated. Some of us migrated to the up north and became Yanks. And we still had the group that stayed south. But we never forget our roots. And my roots are very southern. But hey, you guys got to learn a little bit about me and my family history. You also got to learn why I value some of the things I say. When I say we the people for the people, that's what it's about. It's what it was meant to be about. When I talk about the Constitution, yes, I mean the Constitution. It should be law of the land. It's time we start putting more people like that into office. It's time we start educating our own children. To you guys out there, it's time you become men. Start getting on YouTube, learning how to work on cars, build things. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you'll find the beauty of it, the love of it, and you'll find it'll be uplifting and freeing to you. I know I haven't talked about that issue. I haven't decided if I'm going to. I might. It'll probably come up again. But honestly, for many of you, it's the first time you've heard me use the name John Rutledge. It's not the first time I've used it on this channel. It was just in a 5-hour video for the Independence Day show where I talked some about it, not much. I didn't go into detail like I did, but I'm not going to let somebody there disrespect and lie about my family's name, especially a senator, a congresswoman, who has no business speaking of things she does not know. If you had to read it from some stupid website that actually got debunked for half the stuff they said, you probably need to go back to school. Oh wait, most of the schools teach Common Core, so you wouldn't learn that. Go to a real school and learn the real history. In fact, you should know your history about our forefathers and founding fathers, those that bled and died. Get this Constitution that we have today that you're disrespecting. So yes, I will be patiently waiting for that apology that I know you'll never utter. I hope you prove me wrong, but I know you won't. I'm beneath you in your eyes. And that has become the problem. Many of the congressmen and elected officials in our states treat us like peasants and like they're a monarchy. Well, I'm here to tell you we're not. I'm here to tell you that the only reason you're put in those positions is because some of the system's rigged. And the fact that we just haven't woke up enough people. But those days are coming abruptly to the end. More people are starting to wake up and seeing the real truth. Then I'm going to keep doing what I got to do to make sure people do keep waking up. I don't care. They shut my internet down. I'll get out there. When I'm in the store, talk to people. I'll do videos, record them, send the flash drive to friends and have them upload them for me. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm still hoping to have this matter resolved so I don't lose the internet. Because sometimes, it's just, well, we're prepping things. It's the fan scenario thing, guys. Sometimes you gotta choose the right ground to fight a battle. Sometimes you gotta know when to recede and retreat a bit. So, whatever leverage I've got over them, I might cough it up. Essentially, that's what it's coming down to. Try to call my bluff. They know that's I'm not bluffing. I've showed them the evidence I've got already. You guys seen some of it when I do these live shows, so. But I'm sure if I agree not to go to the news, they might drop the issue. least I hope. But I'm going to get off here. This was not a planned video, like I said, and I've been stewing and steaming over this for a while. Ever since I heard it at 12 o'clock. 12. So, like I said, give you a little history lesson. Let you know a little bit more about who you're talking to. I didn't manage to stay on camera for the whole time. Imagine that. Guys, check out the links. I put them in the description. The YouTube video is her little speech. It's a speech where she talks about these people. The link underneath it talks about her being caught reading false history and talks about it being debunked. And scroll all the way down the bottom, you actually find the same video I just linked above it. Check it out. Especially if you happen to be part of those. It goes back to the founding fathers or those that signed the Constitution. You should take very offense to some of the things she said when she blatantly disrespected and lied about it. It shows you that she doesn't even know our history. So why is she even a senator or a congresswoman? I'm beginning to think maybe my forefather had it wrong. Maybe we need to put term limits on them in their terms. With term limits. Honestly, I think, and I know he'd oppose this part, I think every branch of our government, every state branch, federal, including our Supreme Court, needs to have term limits. Too much has been abused over the years. It will stop some of the corruption. It will stop the career politics. But I would say make the senators take Obamacare. And that's the thing, guys. Research. Find out how many of your senators actually have Obamacare. Yeah, that's right. Not a single one. But then again, it wouldn't affect them because they can afford to pay those premiums. So it's us, we the people that work our asses off every day trying to make sure we get food on our table, nothing is, or get the medicine we need. They can't afford it. It's just forcing people to take secondary jobs, which, by the way, for those that don't know, it also caused a bunch of places to make sure nobody worked full-time jobs, especially in fast food industries, be part-time workers, so they didn't have to pay for their benefits because it cost them more to pay for the benefits. They wouldn't let them work. They might hire them full-time, but they wouldn't let them work over 32 hours. Nobody can make a living like that. Not in this day of age. Food for thought for you guys. I will catch you guys later. You guys have a good evening and enjoy the rest of your week.